All right, if you guys want to move closer, well, I guess you guys can all sit there. You can, whatever you want. I like intimate. So we'll continue the series on the church, the liturgy. Today we're going to talk about the church structure, just the general building and all of the rites and rituals around the building and the outside of the building. As you can see, we're in an office park, so we don't have very much church structure to talk about. But God willing, one of these days we'll get a real church, and then we'll have more to talk about. So I've got pictures of real churches. So the first question is, why are there rituals for the structure? Anyone want to come up with an idea? We're going to go through a million of them. I want to say almost strict rituals about how to build a church, which way does it face, what does it look like, why does it look the way it does? Why do we have these rituals? Anyone have any thoughts? Why have set rituals? Daniel, come up closer, Habibi. You're way too far. I can barely hear you. Anyone? Thoughts? I know you know answers. Come on. What's the question? Okay, so it's that first one. Why are there rituals for the structure? And the answer is, it's not because that's the way God wants it. The answer is because it is for my own personal spiritual benefit. Okay? So we're going to go through a whole bunch of rules around the way the church looks and why it looks the way it does. But it isn't that these are the rules and this is what we have to do because this is why we have to do it. That's not at all it, right? The rituals are there because they enhance the worship of the people participating. Okay? I'll give you a story. When I was a young person, decades ago, there was, maybe I shouldn't tell this story, but no, I think I will. Carissa, get to class. We have the Pope's throne. So in real churches, you'll find that the Pope's throne is often here. Okay, and does anyone know where the original place of the Pope's throne used to be, or the bishop's throne? Anyone? It used to be behind the altar. Yeah. Okay, behind the altar. And so, and there's a beautiful reason why it's behind the altar, right? This is where the bishop used to give his sermon from. So the bishop would sit in the eastern part of the altar, and he would give his sermon from that throne. And the reason he would give his sermon from that throne is, as he gave his sermon, he would think to himself, every word I say has to pass over the altar of God, right? So nothing that comes out of my mouth can be my own. It has to, almost get God's approval. It has to. What I say has to reflect the teaching of the church. And the people listening heard the words coming from where? From the altar, as if coming from God himself. So the people listening got the benefit of feeling like these words were really inspired by the Holy Spirit. Okay? And this is why the chair was put back there. But then as churches got bigger, and there's no microphones, the bishop couldn't yell loud enough to be heard. So they moved the chair out here so that he could see, so that people could hear him a little better. And that's the reason it's out here. It actually should be inside. Well, I was talking with this uncle at the church, and he said, well, you know that we're supposed to put the chair in the back. And I said, why? And I was a young whippersnapper, so I was being a little, just questioning, as teenagers do. And he goes, because. And I said, yeah, but why? Why would you put the chair back there? And he says, because that's where the chair goes. And I said, yeah, but why? He goes, Habibi, it's a traditional church, and the tradition says that that's where we put the chair. And he's looking at me like I'm an idiot. And did you see his reasoning? His reasoning is the chair goes there because that's where the chair goes. And we do what we're supposed to do because that's what we're supposed to do. Okay? Now this kind of logic is not satisfying, shall we say, okay? Nothing we do in the church is for that reason, okay? We don't do anything because that's what we do. We don't do anything because that's the tradition says, right? We do things because that's how we are spiritually edified, right? The things are done so that when I look at them, it affects my spiritual life. Now the problem comes if we do them and you don't know why we do them, then it's not affecting your spiritual life. Okay? And what we do is we then resort to, well, I may not understand why, but it's tradition, we should do it. No. we should learn why it's being done, and then we should let it affect our spiritual life. Okay? So all the rituals in the church are done for that reason, not because they come from above and that's the rules and that's the way it has to be. It's not because that's the way it's always been done, so therefore that should be the way we do it. It's because it affects how I pray. We could. In fact, some churches do that. Some churches do put it back now that we do have the microphone. But, it's one of these things that just got sticky, and then it sat out there. And then people want to see the Pope, too. Like, nobody wants to, and the bishop or whoever. But fair enough. So I messed up on the slides. But so the three church structures that we have in the church are a dome, a cross, and an ark. And I'll show you pictures of those in a second. But those are the three basic ways the outside of the church can look. The dome, as you all know, is a symbol of eternity, right? The circle is a symbol that has no beginning and no end, right? That's why we all wear wedding rings, right? Because marriage is forever, right? And so the circle, always a symbol of infinity, no beginning and no end. And the church, obviously, in God is infinite. The cross is obvious, it's a cross. And then the ark comes back from Noah's ark, in which case the people inside the ship were saved, but the people outside the ship perished, right? And we view the church in the same way. When we're inside the church, those are the people who are saved, and the people outside the church were not saved. And so those are the three designs. Does anyone know which church this one is? St. Mina in Riverside. And you can see what design you think that is. That's the ark, right? They even made those pillars look like oars. It's beautiful. If you've never been to that church, it's gorgeous inside. It's more beautiful than the outside. But there, they didn't take the dome. They didn't take the cross. They clearly took the shape of an ark, of a ship. Yeah. Fedi. This is Fedi, my friend from Seattle. Shout out to Fedi and his wife. Happy Father's Day. He did a great job at lunch today. Fedi does this sort of thing. That's okay. That's How do you know it didn't? I guess we did have. Oh yeah. Well, and it just kind of went where God made it go, right? Okay, I'll give it. All right, next. And this is actually, who knows what church this is, Fedi? This is St. George's Church in Seattle. This is one of our original designs. So I happen to have this on my computer, but this is the church they are building in Seattle right now. And you can see when we did the design, we made it look like a cross. And St. Mary's Church in Los Angeles, it looks very similar. Again, it's a cross shape. And so this is also a very common design. And that's what St. Mary's looks like from the inside. St. Mary's in Los Angeles. You can't really see it, but it's looking straight up. It's kind of a cross from the inside. So those are the different designs of the churches. There actually are very few of them, but there are a few that are like round all the way. But a lot of instead of doing that, a lot of them will put a dome on the church, which is my second to next point. The next thing that all churches do is they face east. And again, facing east is one of those things that has a couple of different symbols. The first one is the second coming is going to be coming from the east. So the book of Revelation says that the second coming is from the east. And that's why, by the way, when we bury people, does anyone know how we bury people? We bury them feet facing east, such that when the second coming comes, they rise out of the grave like this, and they face the second coming. So that's why all cops are buried facing, with their feet facing east. And so, again, when we're praying, we don't face east just because of, the second coming and it's a symbol, but rather it should focus our mind. Okay? What's your second coming? When's the second coming for you? It could be when the bus hits you on the way home, right? So our second coming is, we have no idea when our second coming is. We don't have to worry about the second coming. We have to worry about your end of the world, right? You don't have to worry about the end of ages. So when we focus on the east, we're thinking about our end, right? The end of our lives and what our lives are all about, okay? And again, sometimes you'll hear people, and people smarter than I am, talk a lot about the symbols in Revelation, what the second coming will look like, and what the Antichrist will be like. And a lot of these things, they're probably important, but most likely I'll never see any of these things, right? My second coming is going to happen, probably in a couple of years, and then I don't have to worry about the rest of it. So this focuses us, right? It focuses our mind. And the other one, the one that I actually like more, is the Garden of Eden, the Paradise of Delight, was created in the East. In the book of Genesis, it says he created Adam and Eve, the paradise, in the East. And many of the things we do in the church are all about returning to the state of Adam before the fall. And this is stuff we've talked about a lot in the adult meeting, is we're always trying to be like Adam before the fall in everything we do, right? Even the way we fast, right? The fasting, we eat vegan food, right? We eat vegetarian food. And the reason we do that is Adam was a vegetarian. Okay? So everything we do in the church focuses us on returning to that state of Adam before the fall. So that's another reason we face East, those two reasons. My end, right, and my life, and how I should be focused on that state of Adam. So when I look towards the East, I'm looking towards my fallen state, the state I'm yearning towards becoming once again. Now let's talk about the baptistry, or the baptismal font. It's always placed in the northwest corner of the church, which would be that back corner over there, such that when you walk into the church, it's on your left. And basically, the way it works is you get baptized there, and then you move from the west to the east, and you move from the left to the right, or the center. Okay, so that's why it's in that corner. And Abunam Shoy Kamel used to always have this nice meditation, and he said every time you walk into the church, always look at the baptistry. Stop by the baptistry and look at it, right? And it should remind you of, it should be like going back home to where you were born, right? It's kind of like, when you're little and your parents show you the house you were born in, right? That's the house you were born in on that street, right? And every once in a while you drive by that house and you say, that's where I was born. Okay, that's where I came from. That baptismal font is the same thing, right? It's where we were born. It's like your home. Okay? So he says always stop and look at it, kind of like your home. And that baptismal font has several different shapes, but before we get there, some of the early traditional churches actually have doors from the outside. So they're on the outside of the church. The doors leading into the baptismal font are separate. And there's doors leading into the baptismal font, and then there's doors leading through the room into the church. And the church actually wants you to walk in through those doors and then not walk out of them. Go into the baptismal font and then walk to the church, so you actually pass through it. In fact, I'll show you this baptistry. This is, when we were in Ephesus, I saw this baptistry. It's very nice. I think they had a rain or something, so there's a little bit of water in it. But you can see it's got stairs leading in and then different stairs leading out. Right? So you actually walk into the baptismal font through one set, and you come out a different person. Right? And you don't even take, because, during the baptismal ceremony, you say, I denounce my old ways, I denounce Satan, I denounce the world, and then I turn to the east and I focus on God, right? And so in very much the same way, the baptismal font is you walk in and you walk out. You don't even take the same stairs. You're not on the same path, totally different trajectory in life, and you come out even a different set. Several different shapes. A circle, again, because of infinity, is a shape, and a hexagon. Anyone have any guesses as to why a hexagon is a common shape of a baptismal font? What's a hexagon? 6. Anyone? 6. 6? No. Laser pointer. 6. Which day was Christ crucified on? 6th? Friday? That's the 6th day? Which day is the 7th? Sabbath, right? So Christ was crucified on Friday. That's the 6th day of the week, right? So the 6th day, remember we talk about baptism. What is baptism? It's death with Christ, burial with Christ, and resurrection with Christ, right? So the church will sometimes do a hexagon shape to represent that you're going into the tomb buried with Christ, and kind of a reminder of what baptism actually is. The next shape is an octagon, which is 8 sides. This one's a little bit more obvious. Okay? 8 is always a symbol of the resurrection, right? Because Saturday is the Sabbath, it's the 7th day. Sunday is the 8th day. It's the first day and it's the 8th day. It's the new beginning, right? So we go through the whole cycle of the week, 7 days. 8 is a new beginning. It's a new start. And Christ chose to resurrect on a Sunday, a new beginning, a new start, right? So when we baptize the baby, he comes out and he is a new creation. He's been resurrected with Christ, and he's starting his new life. He's actually starting his spiritual life, or her. So an octagon is a common shape. In fact, the church I used to go to in Michigan, the whole church was shaped, and it was an octagon. It's the only church I've ever been to. It was built as an octagon. And again, the 8 as a symbol of the resurrection. Beautiful. No, it was kind of out there. It's okay. No lightning struck us. Now let's talk about the building itself. So there's the dome. What church is that? That's it. This extra points. It's not here. It's in Zaytun, right? That's St. Mary's Church in Zaytun in Egypt, where St. Mary appeared quite a few years ago. And how many domes do they have? 5, right? So there's several different numbers you can have with domes. A lot of churches have 1 dome. Some churches will have 3 domes as a symbol of the Trinity. And then you can also have 5 domes. And the 5 domes is the big one in the middle is Christ, and the 4 domes around him are the 4 evangelists. So that's another symbolism of the domes. And the domes have a very nice symbol. Obviously, the dome is a circle. And again, like we said, it's infinity. It always represents God. And then the building usually has 4 corners. Okay? And we talk about, in the book of Revelation, the 4 corners of the earth, right? The Bible uses this kind of language. Okay? So the building itself, the structures, the 4 walls, represents the earth. Okay? And the dome represents heaven. Okay? So when we put the dome onto a building, what are we doing? We're combining 2 things, aren't we? We're taking earth, the 4 walls, and we're putting on it a circular structure onto a square structure. And the circular is the infinity. It's God. So the church is where God and man come together, right? It's where God meets man. And this is why in the dome, we usually will portray Christ. Here, Christ is surrounded by all the saints who have come and gone before us. So Christ is in heaven, and he's looking down on us, right? Wishing for us to be there. And the saints are with him, again, looking to us, inspiring us, encouraging us. And if you think about it a little bit further, right, the church, Christ said, the church is my body, right? He's the church is the body of Christ, and he is the head. So the church is where God and man came together. Christ is God and man, and the church is where earth and heaven come together, right? So oftentimes we think about church as heaven on earth, right? And that's one of the reasons we think of it that way. And the dome helps us think that way. We see heaven, and we see God looking down on us from the dome. And then we have the iconostasis. And this is usually a wood structure. It's iconostasis means icon holder, literally, or icon screen. You know, and as like we talked about last week, you know, ours is made out of paper, but it does, unless I flimsy it like that. But it's supposed to be made out of wood, and it carries the icons. Now, the iconostasis this was a Greek church, and we talked about this last week when I kind of went through the icons, so I won't go through it again. But there's always Christ and St. Mary and John the Baptist, and it's the same tradition in the Greek and Russian Orthodox churches. They have the exact same icons and the same language we do. This is a Coptic church, and I found on the web last night. It's very beautiful. You notice they have two lecterns, and usually a lot of the churches will have 2 lecterns, one on either side. In some churches, they'll have one facing east and one facing west. And during Holy Week, they actually use both of them, and we can talk about that another time. Okay. And then if you notice, there's a big door right in the middle, and then there's 2 side doors. And the one in the middle is called the royal door. And that one really no one is supposed to go through other than the priest during the service. In fact, only he can open and close the curtain, and there's certain prayers that he's supposed to say when he closes the curtain and opens the curtain, so only he opens and closes the curtain. And people really aren't supposed to go through here. The deacons are supposed to go through those two side doors, and they're often called the deacon doors. And in the Orthodox Church, the other Orthodox churches, if you notice the two, this laser doesn't work, but like right there, that there's an angel on this. Oops, it's dying. There's an angel at the end and an angel on this end. Do you see that on the iconostasis? And those are actually doors, and they always put angels on those doors because the deacons are like angels. And so they're called the deacon doors, and so they always use those, and they put angels on their icons there. And then they have this ostrich egg that we have up here as well that we got from Egypt, and the ostrich egg. As you know, the egg is always a symbol of the resurrection. And so we put the egg up, and the kids paint Easter eggs during Easter. This is actually a very ancient Orthodox tradition where we paint eggs during the resurrection because the egg is a symbol of resurrection, and we like to focus on the resurrection during the service. Why is it an ostrich? Lots of reasons. I think the primary reason is the ostrich egg is bigger than a chicken egg, and you can actually see it. And when you break it, it doesn't crack. It's thicker. So that's the primary reason. Other people give it symbolism, like the ostrich likes to look at its young and focuses on it. I don't know if that's after the fact reason or a before the fact reason. I'm guessing it's just because ostrich eggs are bigger and more solid. Yes. The reason, actually, I don't know if that's right, but I mean, in the early church, one of the ways that Mary Magdalene actually used to preach the resurrection to people was, people would say, well, how can someone dead come back to life? And she would say, it's like, how could someone in a sealed womb come out? And she would use the symbol of the egg as a symbol of how something that looks inert, something alive, can actually come out of it. And ever since then, that's sort of when it sort of took off. Yep. What she said is the reason they pick an ostrich egg is because an ostrich, unlike a chicken or a bird or something, breaks itself out of the egg. Like it pokes a hole. I'm not an ostrichician, but if I was, I would know. But apparently it breaks itself out as opposed to being helped by its mom or sat on or something. Okay. And then this is another iconostasis. I just saw it last night. It's beautiful. Why are you laughing? Did I say ostrich? Oh. Another iconostasis. It's very old, very ancient, but again, if you Google that word, you're going to see a million different designs. And then the question is, what's the purpose of the iconostasis? So why is it here? Why put this wood screen between me and the sanctuary? And a lot of people think it's to separate the sanctuary area from the nave of the church, the rest of the church. Okay? And it's actually not. Okay? It's actually just the opposite. Okay? It actually connects the sanctuary with the nave. Okay? Because the sanctuary is always a symbol of heaven. Okay? And when we do our processions, for example, like during the 40 days after the resurrection, you notice in the procession, Abuna would start, and the deacons would start in the altar, okay, in the sanctuary. They would come out, and then they would go back in to the sanctuary. Okay? And this actually tells the story of the coming of man, right? Because Christ was begotten before all ages. The Word of God was begotten before all. He was with the Father, and then he came down into earth, dwelt among us, and then came back, was ascended up back into heaven. Okay? So the sanctuary is always a symbol of heaven, and the nave, this part, is always a symbol of the earth. Okay? The screen doesn't separate the two, it connects the two. So you see all these saints, and they're all in heaven looking at you, right? Almost encouraging you to come join them, praying for you, connecting you with them, right? So our relationship with those in heaven is one that's very open, right? We don't believe that when people die, they're gone. We don't believe that at all. We believe there is still a very strong connection between those who have reposed and those on earth. And we say there's a heavenly church, the church of the victorious, and the church of the struggling. And there's a very strong connection between us. That's why we continue to talk to the saints, and that's why we continue to ask for the intercession, and miracles, thousands of miracles have occurred of people who have reposed and come back and helped people, those on earth. So there's this connection. So the iconostasis connects us between the two. And one of the things you often notice, like in this one, you just can't help it, but there's so many saints there. It's like you can look and you can see heaven in front of you. And one time I was at we were doing some a visit of a hospital, a kids hospital, and I don't know if you've ever been to a kids hospital. We're with church, and we're going, encouraging them, making cards, stuff like that. And you've all been to a kids hospital. It's a very depressing place, right? Kids with shaved heads, kids with all kinds of diseases, kids with all kinds of issues, and it's a very hard place to be. Okay, and when you're there, you are very depressed and discouraged. Okay, kids are here. Thanks, honey. That's my wife. She brought them all back. All right. If we all sit still, they won't notice us, and then they'll walk away. It's just a goal. It's a dream. We'll hold on to it. Oh, your parents aren't here. No, they're outside. Go outside. That's where they are. That's where the candy is. It's outside. There they go. There they go. There you go. All right, perfect. All right, so the key is not to be entertaining, and they leave. Sorry. Okay, so we've all been. I'll just finish real quick. We've all been to a children's hospital, right? It's a depressing place, okay? And you think to yourself, this is where people go to get better, and I don't see anybody better. I see people really sick, people looking really bad, right? And you can be very discouraged at a place like this, okay? But a hospital is where you go to get better, right? So every once in a while you'll go to a hospital, and when I was at this hospital, I saw this. They had pictures all up and down of former patients. And they had a picture of them when they were in treatment, shaved head, in a gown, whatever, in a bed. And then they showed a picture of them 5 years later, riding a bicycle, jumping rope, playing ball, doing something with their friends, okay? And I kind of forgot about the tour for a second. I started staring at these pictures. I'm like, why are they putting these up here? What administrator thought of this? And it quickly hit me, you can get quite depressed in a children's hospital, but they want to show you the success stories, right? They want to show you, look, don't look here, right? Here you're going to get discouraged. Look up here, right? You see, this is what these kids will do after they graduate from the hospital. Look at the lives they went on to. And those pictures were there to inspire you. They're there, you look at them and you say, yeah, there's hope, okay? And it kind of occurred to me that this is sort of what the church does for us, right? Because when you come to a church and you expect to see good people, you're quickly discouraged, right? Are there good people in the church? There's lousy people in the church, right? Full of hypocrites, tons of garbage. At one time I heard someone said, no, the church is like Noah's Ark. It's full of animals and it stinks. But it's the only way to get to heaven. I heard this from Father Thomas Hopko. It's very true, right? You come to church, and Satan often uses this against us, right? He says, you call this a church? Look at the priest does. Look at the deacon. Look at that guy who thinks, the guy who gives the adult meeting. Look what he does after church, right? And Satan often uses this against us, right? Look at this, this guy, I know he cheats on his taxes. I know that guy cheats on his wife. I know that guy's lying about this or that, right? And he uses it to discourage us and say, you see, church is no good, right? And the problem is we're looking at what? The people next to us, the hospital. The church is a hospital. It's where sick people come to get better. Don't look at the people in the hospital. They don't look very good. They're all sick, right? Look to the people who've graduated, right? And the church does this. It puts all the icons around us to inspire us and to say, don't look at the people around you, right? Look at the graduates, right? The people in the hospital, sick, full of problems, lots of issues. You'll only get discouraged, right? So when we get inspired by looking at the saints who've come and gone before us, that becomes our inspiration. That becomes our focus. Don't look at the person next to you who cheats on his taxes. Okay, so the purpose of this icon screen and purpose of all the icons is not to separate. It's to connect us with heaven more so than anything else. I think we're done. Does anybody else have any questions? Anything to add? Any questions about the church structure? I didn't get into the sanctuary very much, but yeah. Yeah. And Nagy and Rafit will kind of talk to them about this, but it's best if they use the side deacon doors. And the reason, by the way, we don't wear shoes inside the altar, inside the sanctuary, is the same reason Moses took off his shoes in front of the burning bush. God said, where you stand is holy ground, take off your shoes. And that was sort of the first time it occurred to man that somehow there's this connection between reverence and taking off your shoes. And again, I want to point out one thing really important. Why do we take our shoes off inside the sanctuary? It's not because lightning strikes us if we walk in with shoes. Okay? Every once in a while, you'll see a kid walk in with shoes. And heaven help that kid, right? 19 adults grab him by his neck, rip him back, throw him quickly before he's killed, right? Yell at him and just, what are you doing, right? And scare the poor kid, half to death. It's like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with the adults? Excuse me, right? If you walk into shoes, nothing happens to you, right? In fact, in the Greek Orthodox Church, the priests pray with their shoes on. Okay? So that's not why we do it. It's not because the lightning hits or anyone explodes or you have to grab the kid by his hair, throw him out quickly before anything. You see things like this, right? The reason is, when I take my shoes off, it adds a layer of respect for me to go into the sanctuary. Like, I don't want to just walk into a place with my shoes on, okay? And when I have to take my shoes off, it makes me think, you know what? This place is different. The sanctuary is just a little different, okay? It's for me. Important point. The ritual is for me to have reverence for the sanctuary. In fact, in some of the, Father of the Year, in some of the monks' cells, every once in a while you hear about a very holy monk, and the other monks, when they go into a cell, you know what they'll do? They'll take their shoes off. Why? Because like nothing. No, it's the feeling. It's the reverence that they have toward this monk, and they'll take their shoes off before they go into his cell. Okay? So again, that's what's driving the decision. It isn't the other way around. It isn't about, and you see people doing, non-Christian things, really turning other people off to church because of their crazy, adherence to a ritual, whereas the ritual isn't there to be crazily adhered to. It's there for my own personal spiritual benefit and my feeling and my reverence toward the place. Any other? Yeah. Yeah, no, that's the Al-Musa, right? Yeah, and that's the burning bush, exactly. And Abuna Tedros, in his book, he talks about it. He says one of the reasons why is in the old days, shoes were always made out of leather, and leather is the skin of a dead animal. And so you don't want to have any association with death in the place of life. So that's one kind of meditation on why they take off shoes. Any other questions? Yeah. You can ask Fedi. I wasn't there. He said if Noah's Ark didn't have any paddles, how did it move forward? See? Okay. So, since I wasn't there, I'm going to let you two argue about it. I know. Just fun and games. Yeah.
There's a point, and I don't know why, because I haven't been attending the deacon class, which I actually go to Saturday at 6:45. The deacon walks backwards.
Yeah.
And so how would he do it? Like, that's an important, he has the candles.
Yeah.
He's walking out with the
But he doesn't step out backwards. I mean, when? I see what you're saying. You just take a look. You look behind you.
but I'm saying that the king comes to that door.
Yeah. During that part, he does. Yeah. Because he doesn't leave Abuna in that part. Right. I mean, just in general, going in and out, you're not supposed to. And again, it's an act of reverence. No lightning, nothing. It's just an act of reverence. And then one more thing that Mary raised an interesting point is, whenever you enter the sanctuary, you always enter with your right foot, and you enter on the right side of the door. And when you leave the sanctuary, you leave with your left foot, and you leave on the left side of the door. So these are sort of the small symbolisms that the deacons do. And again, it's an act of reverence. And we never give our back to the altar, even when we leave the church. So when you leave the church, you'll find often, people, when they walk out, they'll walk out backwards out of the church, right? And they'll make the sign of the cross and venerate the altar as they're leaving the church, just not to give their back, right? And we see this even in ancient Chinese, emperors, right? You never give your back to the emperor, right? And he's just a guy. So the church has sort of taken this same thing, and again, it's a feeling that you have of I'm not going to give my back to the altar, right? So you don't give your back to the altar during the service at any time, like I am now. Any other questions? No? Okay. Glory be to God forever, amen. Let's stand up and pray. Make us, Lord, worthy to say with all thanksgiving, Our Father who art in heaven.